Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Life at Work. I am joined by Akshita today. Akshita, how are you doing today?
Well, absolutely fine. I think I'm just going about wrapping up my day. And thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you quickly walk us through your journey so far from education to all the work ex you have had till now?
Yeah, of course. I think my journey is also a good example of how careers don't always follow a straight line. I started. I come from a commerce background. I started with my bachelor's of commerce professional at Christ University, along with chartered business account certification. Right. While it involved a lot of finance, business, and understanding how companies operate, I did not really get started with finance heavy roles in the early on. Right. I started at Amazon as a content test associate for Alexa devices. And it wasn't a typical marketing role like one would expect, but it gave me a very deep understanding of customer experience very early on, which is a lot more valuable. And if I have to like break it down, it was a lot to do with understanding user journeys, and then testing experiences, identifying gaps, and this kind of developed into my core mindset that how do you make or how do you build something that actually works for the end user, right? This particular thing instilled in during Amazon. And then I moved to Goldman Sachs, which was into investment research. So that involved a lot of client data and decision making into analysis. Right, one would assume banking is it's heavy, and I enjoyed it, to be honest. Right, and while I was very much drawn into analysis, but I understood it a little early on that I was more driven and drawn towards execution and management, more specifically into marketing. And that's what led me into marketing and campaign management side of the world, uh, which made up or paved a path to Google. Right, I started at Google. I worked with Google Pay, to be specific, first in operations and optimization, and then in as a strategic partner manager, handling clients and then growth and then revenue. Right, that was a lot on Google. From then I moved to Paytm, which is where I handled SMB side of the world, and across channels like a WhatsApp, push notification, SMS, very execution driven. One would see a shift moving from Google to Paytm, and I enjoyed it. But a lot of things were to be said about Paytm, and I quite felt it during that time, right? And then I came to Amazon, and it's a complete circle. It was a full circle, right? Now I've stepped into Amazon as a campaign and creative manager, managing large enterprises, working across platforms like DSP, and then Twitch and Prime Video. And a lot of it is cross-functional teams handling and then end-to-end execution. So if I have to like summarize my journey, I started with business foundation, moved through operation and analysis, and now I'm into campaign management, which kind of combines all of this together. So that's my journey. Yeah.
That's quite a work ex, I would say. Like, which year did we start? Did you start working initially back then?
Well, it was in 2018. It was
18,
in
20.
April. Yeah, 2018.
From all the tech giants to fintech and
Oh yeah, it has been one of a roller coaster, to be honest. And I have loved each and every bit of it. Like each and every stint, it taught me so many different curves and experimentation that I don't think I would have possibly learned if I'd stuck around in any single company for a very long term. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So during the college days, what did you think your career would look like? What was the imagination
Hmm.
you had? How different is it today?
Yeah, I think like just like any other student, I had made a very structured view of how my career would look like. Since I'd already gotten into finance, I pictured a path of getting into finance, sticking around for a long term. But then in reality, when I started working, I enjoyed a lot of my aspects that I pivoted towards were execution, decision making, and problem solving, all of it at one place, which was obviously not possible given the roles that we were in. And that's when I realized that although you might have done a degree in finance, it's not necessary that one cannot move into different domains. It shouldn't be you shouldn't be restricting yourself if your skills are transferable, right? And in my case, a lot of skills were transferable. That is analytical thinking, business, making business decisions, or big problem solving. It was just about repositioning my existing skills into skills that are required by the role. So yeah, put together, it was just understanding what you really want. And just because your qualification says you have done finance doesn't mean that you have to stick to it for a very long term. Just it all depends upon how you apply them. Yeah.
That is really good, I would say. So moving on to the next question. When someone hears about your job role, let's say campaign and creative manager at Amazon, so what is that one misunderstanding or the fact they misunderstand about the job role?
Yeah, I think that's one of the, very commonly asked question that, like what does a campaign or like a campaign creative or marketing manager do in general? Uh, our mainly our work involves a lot of decision making in terms of in what campaigns can actually work well, what cannot, and a lot of it also has to do with stakeholder management. So, especially in campaign management, it is all about execution. And execution, along with it, also depends upon how well you're aligning with teams, right? Because at any point in given time, you'll be working with other teams like sales, design, legal and policy and operations. So I think stakeholder management plays a very big role and is very critical for success. And I think one should not be just overlooking the fact that marketing is all about creativity. It's also very important to know your stakeholders and understand and help them align for the bigger vision that is to achieve as an objective.
So
Yeah.
can we take an example of a campaign? Like who are the stakeholders in that campaign?
Yeah. Okay. I think I can take an example from my time at Google Pay
Okay.
because I think it captures how I approach campaigns. Right. So there was this D2C brand, right, wherein everything looked fine, like, great distribution, strong reach, right. But then when we look deeper, we saw that this particular campaign had about 70 to 80% negative user feedback, which is a huge red flag for
And
someone
what
in.
was this campaign about?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, so D2C brands, they usually sell products like skincare products or like serums and all of this. And when we look deeper, we understood that while they were doing great distribution, we identified through user cohorts and behavior, right? And when we look deeper, we saw that they were definitely reaching eligible audience, but they were not reaching the right audience. There's a huge difference in that. Your data set will show you this is the number of audience you can reach within this time frame, right? Campaigns usually run for about 30 days or 45 days based on, you know, different segments, user fatigue. But then this particular brand was not reaching the right audience or the relevant audience. So I stepped back, I broke the data down, I identified the high value user segment, and also we kind of like extracted their purchasing behavior. And then we went about, focusing, more like testing out a focus campaign, only reaching this particular group. And while this also meant that we'll be reaching less audience, but the relevant audience, right? Like lesser distribution and more audience, more relevant audience. So in a span of 10 days, the negative feedback drops significantly to about 45%. So this is the kind of decisions that one has to make in campaign management, because there's a lot of cost at stake, right? When you're doing campaigns, it could be either during mid-flight, like when your campaign is already like delivering, so you have to take all these different angles into consideration. Yeah.
For a student, if someone wants to join this field, so what are the tools that you use in the technical aspect of it? Like, is it SQL or Excel? What kind of data analytics tool are you using?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting one, and I think very relevant to the kind of environment we're in right now. For someone who wants to get started or is planning to pivot into marketing and campaign management side of business, I think your core should have analytical thinking as the business mindset. You should be analytical in how you think, not just looking at data, but reading data and asking the right questions. If a campaign is performing, why is it performing, and what can be improved, right? This is one core analytical skill that one should possess. And when it comes to technical side of things, I think SQL, Excel, and some of those CRM tools, for example, Salesforce, right? And then you have there are tools kind of Clever Tap. There's a tool called Clever Tap, and then there's MoEngage. So these are all like customer relation management tools which help you set up campaign, understand the data, track performance, everything in one place. And these are like massively used across different organizations, right? But I personally more believe in in having your own mindset, like building your own set of skill set. Yeah.
So circling back to the working culture or the working, like how does your day look like? How many hours you work in a day?
Oh wow. I mean, I wish I could give a fixed answer or fixed number of hours, but being in a intense a role like campaign management, it is a lot to do with managing timelines, handling huge budgets, and stakeholder management. I've been pressing on this word called stakeholder management because that plays a huge role in my job, right? We From the time I start my day till the time like I wrap up and then I pack my bag, it's all about, okay, did this happen? Did this go through? Did we have the approval? Like, what got stuck in between, right? What can we do to expedite this faster? So a lot of my time is invested in, aligning teams, aligning people, and helping them achieve, and understanding that, what, this campaign is to go live and this is at risk. So yeah, I think knowing and understanding what are the trade-offs, right, when you don't meet a certain thing is what really helps it more, more clearer and gives you a clear idea as to how do you deal with it. Yeah.
Typically, like how many hours? 10, 12, or beyond that?
I would still say that's very subjective, but I would say it still takes like about 8 to 9 hours, a minimum,
Industry average.
right? And huh?
That is
Sorry?
industry average, I would say, 8 to 9.
Industry average, but I don't want to exaggerate on this. But there have been times where I've had to stretch more than that. But there have also been times when I had to do it under, right? If there's a campaign that's performing well for you, you have done everything, we have launched on time. There's nothing like you take a step back and chill. No one's there to question or anything like that. So really depends on the time also, right? If it's peak season, right? For example, in Amazon right now, we're gonna be approaching Prime Day, right? It's upcoming, and we know that for the 6 weeks, it's gonna be super intense. Like it's gonna be crazy. So we'll be expected to kind of like extend or like be available during the time we're requested to be. Yeah.
So how many teams you have to collaborate with during suppose the Prime Day or some event is coming up for Amazon? So how many teams you will be collaborating with, or what is it?
Uh, I mean, that's a great question because managing teams, collaborating with them, especially in a global team like ours. So I work with a global team at Amazon Ads, right? And I particularly work with the Pan EU accounts, right? And when we have these high volume events like Prime Day or any other specific like events that are happening in locales, for example, in Germany or in France or Italy, we'll be having at least 6 to 7 touch points, from sales, from design to legal, and then compliance, legal and compliance, and then operations to performance team. So day in and day out, we're just like talking numbers. We're like, okay, this creative is not looking good. Can we please like replace it? And this is what is pending from the advertiser. Can we have this revised? Or like, operations would be like, we cannot really go live without getting this approval. So a lot of our time is spent in, like I've been mentioning, getting the cross functional teams alignment, and yeah, getting approvals on time so that campaigns actually campaigns actually like launch on time, and also because there's a stipulated time the campaigns need to be live. Right? If an advertiser is committed for a budget of, let's say, $200K, right? They'll be spending it in a time frame of 30 days or 35 days. And if we overshoot that, we'll be kind of compromising on that. So we don't want that to happen. So within this timeline, we'll do whatever we can, optimize, and then bring scale the campaigns in the best way possible and align with teams. Yeah, that's how it would typically look like.
That's a lot of collaboration, I would say. Yeah.
Oh, one can imagine. Totally, totally. Yeah.
So sometimes for us, from a student's point of view, they feel like I have done a degree in finance, I have done a degree in marketing, so I should look
Hmm.
for roles in a particular field only. So how did the pivot happen for you? Like, what was the pivotal point in your journey?
Wow, that's an interesting one. Well, I think this is a this is something that a lot of people worry about or struggle with. That let's say if I've done my degree in finance or in marketing or something, this is where I should be headed to, like as my next step. But your degrees don't really define your careers. I I personally believe in that. It's a lot about how you apply the skills that you have attained during your degree, or maybe through different sort of courses or certifications that you have done along with your degree. And in the current environment that we're in, there's a lot of skills that are easily transferable, as I was mentioning before, right? And if I have to quote my own example, I started in finance and then I moved into business. And I realized that while I loved analysis, what I wanted to, or what I was more excited was about understanding how can I create more impact, or how can I bring ideas to life. And when I realized that, yeah, my initial instinct was, let's go with marketing and management because that sits much closer to execution, right? And because I wanted to, like, make decisions that influence the outcomes, right? And having been in marketing for over like 5 6 years now, I've realized that one does not just need to sit and you know crib about not having the right degree. One can always go online, search for the right relevant and you know time specific courses, and definitely upskill, right? And go about taking certifications, or just like have a connect with your mentor who can show you the right direction in the current domain that you are looking for. Yeah.
So exploring, I think it's the best option to discover what you're into.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. I think, like one would always plan. I also did that. I planned my career, but I think I only discovered it through experiences. It really paved path. If I were to like plan and do it, I don't think it would happen, honestly. So yeah, I think discovering and exploring, it takes risks, but you just got to do it. Yeah.
So when you move between Goldman, Google, Paytm, or Amazon, what did the interviewers really care about? Like they cared about the degree or the grades or the past brands, skills, stories. What was it?
Yeah, I think again, like, a lot of people think, having brand names, great brand names on your resume will make you look more credible. But I think from my experience, interviews, go past your or go beyond your resumes. They really try to understand how you think. So if I have to put it like into three things, it would be understanding how you think, how do you approach a problem, what are the decisions that you're making, and what is the impact that you've created, right? And the biggest difference is that it need not involve a lot of big brand names or brand names just for the sake of catching attention or like getting calls. It's also about how you can actually apply those skills in the job that requires it, and that requires certain understanding, like that requires a, I would probably put it into framework, like that is, and we usually use it in Amazon as well, which is STAR, situation, task, action, result, right? And this is used widely across, right? If you know there's a problem, how do you approach it, what did you change, like what was your decision, and what was the impact that you created. So if you list down these things in a clearly explainable format, I think this will stand out much more than just big brand names per se. Yeah.
Okay. If you had to narrow down to the three or five skills at max, what skills you would recommend to the students, right?
Wow. Okay. So I think I would probably like narrow them down to like three skills.
Yeah.
That is again very relevant to someone who is planning to or already into marketing and campaign management. So first, my personal favorite is analytical thinking. Go beyond just the data or reading data, ask questions. If something is performing, why is it performing, and what can be improved, right? And second is basically stakeholder management, right? You work with a lot of teams, right? You need to be able to adapt and align them so that all of the needs at the need of the hour comes into place with the right decisions that you're making. And third is, I would say personally, is proactive communication, right? Uh, let's say, for example, a campaign is not going to work well, not going to, work as planned. Instead of just sitting over there, thinking what can go wrong, you can take a step back and react. Instead of reacting, proact. Like be on top of it, inform and keep the people around you who are relevant to the team informed that this is what's going wrong, this is how we can fix it. So that will help take out a lot of pressure, right? That this is what can go wrong, this is how I can fix it. So I think these three skills are extremely important for a lot of our day-to-day things. Yeah.
So for a college student, who are the stakeholders for a college student? How can he or she improve on stakeholder management?
Well, I think your stakeholder management first should be you and your immediate peer group, right?
Okay.
To begin from there, right? Who do you interact with? I'm not saying your own personal group of friends, but people who you have as your coaches or mentors, right? Or from your college, or anybody, any counseling or somebody who's there to like kind of show you direction, right? So get these questions answered. Maybe seek some counseling, which can help you, move into direction that you're planning to, and skill sets that are relevant to these sort of industries. It can evolve, but I think one just shouldn't shy away from adapting to what it really requires, right? And I think I'll touch upon artificial intelligence, but yeah, that's going to be a lot of in-depth conversation on that. Yeah.
So do you believe that festing or doing a club activity during college days helps? in the job role?
Um, I think all of us are in such an environment where even if you don't want to, you're just pushed into it, right? And that builds a lot of confidence early on, right? Be it debates or speeches or like extracurricular activities. I'm not sure how it can have a direct impact on your job, but it will definitely, improve your communication skill, be able to speak confidently to your clients. For example, if someone wants to get into sales, they have to do a lot of pitching, like, product pitching. And that comes with only a lot of practice when you're open to speaking to a huge forum. So yes, go ahead and sign up wherever you can for all these, you have all these MUNs, speeches, debates, Toastmasters, etc. And these are like great forums where you can just expose yourself and make your point. That will really come in handy when you're debating at a very large topic involving budgets at, companies, different companies. Yeah.
Again, explore.
All about exploration. Life is exploration, right? And in the end, yeah.
So if I had a fresher CV, I am in the third year of college. So anything important which my
Mhm.
CV should contain for me to get into the roles which I want to, be in marketing or finance.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, any entry level, be it any type of CV, right? Be it your, I think it has to clearly show your impact, right? Don't just like list down responsibilities, explain how did you achieve the outcome that you achieved, right? Like break it down into like how did you approach the problem, the decisions that you had to take, and the kind of constraints that you overcame, and this is what you achieved, right? When you have this framework and when you break it down with data is what really helps you quantify the impact. So I think when your resume or your CV is you know uh, brought up with a lot of data and measurable outcome, that's what really catches interviewers eyes and will help you like land a interview in the end. Yeah.
So, and do you feel that master's degree or any specialization is required to get into roles like these?
Oh wow, that's I mean, I don't know if you're like there's this whole controversy going on right now, especially from Nikhil Kamat's recent talk at Columbia Business School. I mean, if you ask me personally, I would say do an MBA or a higher qualification uh, only if you think you want to get into a specific field, right? For example, and it should not be a step just because it's the next step, right? For example, in my own case, I started working, and then I realized, okay, this is the XYZ that I like I love doing, that is marketing, execution, business, problem solving, decision making. And let's say if you don't have that clarity as yet, that you don't know what you want to do right now, then skip that part right now. Actually, just get your hands dirty at the work, like sit with it for XYZ time frame, and then if you have clarity that, oh, I want to explore and grow in this domain, then go ahead with MBA. If not, then figure out. Just don't do an MBA just for the sake of doing an MBA, because MBA's best advantage is when you know how you want to use it, right? When you know how you want to use those skills. So yeah, I think, yeah, it's all about understanding and having the clarity of thought.
Clarity as well
Yeah.
as the purpose. It would help a lot.
Of course, where you're headed to, and then how you want to make what you want to make out of it, basically, of the MBA. Yeah.
So I've got 5 minutes on the clock right now. So in 2 minutes, can you summarize the AI discussion? Which I know it's very deep conversation, but
Yeah.
trying to keep within the time. 2 minutes.
Well, I'll definitely like try. I think marketing is evolving very fast, and AI is not something that we talk about in future. It's literally part of our daily work every day. And a lot of people confuse with the fact that AI is going to replace us, our jobs, which is not true. AI is definitely helping us in very, very practical ways. For example, in at Amazon Ads, we use AI for a lot of our things. That is audience segmentation, and then automating tasks which are repetitive, optimization, or like reporting, and also like identifying patterns, creative patterns that can help with better performance. But in the end, AI is not going to replace decision making. It will definitely give you better outputs, but your core fundamentals is basically your decision making. You are the a human is the one who's going to make the trade-offs, whether the trade-off is going to be beneficial or is not. That's something that still lies in the hands of a human, and AI can only be a another sort of a peer that can help you but not replace you. So yeah, do get acquainted with all the courses that are gonna be useful for you in your particular role, but still stick to your core fundamentals that are relevant for your particular role. Yeah, that is more on AI, but I could still talk for hours and hours as to how we can implement it and still not be like laid off. Yeah.
Maybe some other episode, I'll love to have you back if possible.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
love to. Like, this has been an interesting one. It kind of took me back down my own journey and made me realize, like, I've come this far and all the different decisions that I had to take, all the risks that I have to take. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on this
Mhm.
podcast.
Thank you for joining me. And to the most important question for the day, I hope everyone is waiting for this. What about the salary expectations for a fresher as well as for an individual who is at your career level? How much they can expect to make?
I know salaries and it's a very important question. But my recommendation would be, to instead of figuring out the salary based on different like portals and all, try to like explore your own skill sets that are more relevant to you in your particular role, because once you crack those skill sets that are much needed, I think the salary pattern will just follow faster and you can have that more sustainably done. And I think it's all about how you apply your skills, right, in different domains within marketing or in campaign management. Salaries will, jump X amount faster than you'd imagine. And I have been a personal, you know, I can personally vouch that. That has happened with me in the last 8+ years of my working experience. Yeah.
Yeah. For a fresher, like it's a very subjective term, I understand, regarding the salaries. But for a fresher, how much it can be? A number range somehow.
Um, well, again, it really does depend upon the organization, I would say. I don't want to boil down to any specific organization, right? But let's say if you're starting out as a marketing analyst or an associate in the current, in the current environment we're in, again, I would be wrong in quoting numbers, but
It's okay.
don't settle for anything less than 10, right? 10 is a minimum right now that's happening. That's something that is talked about in industries, especially in marketing. And given that marketing is no longer a single or a silo domain, you have to also be able to, use AI and get acquainted. So don't settle for anything lesser than 10 lakh if that helps motivate you move into this field. But yeah, the upwards of this, it's amazing, right? If you grow into this particular domain, I think there's definitely a limit that I can't even tell you. So there are a lot of things that come with it by nature.
Pretty
Yeah.
optimistic for a fresher, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, got me started there. So hopefully will get me, sticking around here. But yeah,
Again,
that's
again,
how
I
I would
like
look at
to
it.
mention it's very subjective based on the college degree, the experience you have, and everything matters. So this is just a number. Please look before you follow.
Yeah, and don't be also disappointed just because it doesn't fit in a certain range. I personally don't think of it in that way. Let's say you're starting out, you are a fresher. You're there to learn, you're there to explore, you're there to make mistakes, learn from them, and show and prove that you are ready to take up the opportunity that is not even given to you. A lot of times in roles like these, which are very dynamic, you're not given an opportunity. You just have to build it yourself here. Nobody's going to come and tell you this is what you have to do here. You just have to go and that's how you showcase, and you would not even imagine. Well, at least in my case, that has happened with me. I got promoted in Google in about 8 months internally, and officially in a year, because I didn't ask, oh, I want to do this. I just said that I'm going to do this. This is a problem that I've figured out, and this is how I'm going to approach it. And the salary bit just increased because I showed interest, and then I just didn't go about knocking the door for the opportunity. I just created it myself. So it's all about your mindset here, and salary will just tend to follow.
All right. That was it from my end. Thank you so much for joining me today for this conversation. Really appreciate it. And
Thank you. Thank you. It
thank you so
was my
much.
pleasure, and yeah, all the best for your future. Thank you.